Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're starting a brand new tutorial series on creating a basic inventory system using Unreal Engine blueprints. This is going to be a multi-part series where we cover everything from setting up the UI, creating basic item pickups, adding those items to the UI, and a lot more. In future episodes, we're going to be diving into using and interacting with those items, improving the UI to keep track of number of items, and making the UI look a lot better. If you haven't already, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content in this series or others. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to do is set up our widgets to be able to display the inventory menu. To do that, let's go ahead and open a new user interface widget blueprint and select user widget. Now let's name this first one um, inventory widget. If we go into our inventory widget, we want to add a few things here. Let's start with a canvas panel. And inside of that, let's add a border. And then inside of the border, we want to do a scroll box. This border and scroll box is where we're going to populate the items that we have in our inventory. So for now, we'll kind of arrange this to show up kind of in the middle of the screen. So let's do our anchors. Top left is good. And let's try to do something like maybe right there and make this a little bigger. And then for the color, you could do kind of whatever you want. I like to make it some sort of gray and then like that, just so you can see when it's actually populated. That's all we're going to do for now right there. The next widget we need to make sure we save that, is the widget that's going to populate the list item. We need to make the list item. So let's do another user interface widget blueprint, user widget, and let's name this one. We can just do inventory item. Let's open that one up. In the inventory item, we want to add another canvas panel. Inside the canvas panel, we're going to do a text block. And then we want to wrap the canvas panel in a button. So right click, wrap with, and go to button. And then we want to wrap this button in a size box. Now we can work on making this look how we want it. The button, do whatever colors you want. I kind of like to go with this blue still. And then a little more alpha than our main menu is going to have. That looks good there. For the text block, we can set anchors in the middle. Or do some sort of maybe size to content. Might look like what we want. And we'll check that in a moment. Let's go to our third person character and see if we can at least get the first menu showing up. It won't have any items in it yet. To do this, I want to add a button that's going to open up my menu. We could do 3 or maybe do like I for inventory. from here, we want to come off of pressed and we want to say create widget. This widget is going to be the main widget. So inventory widget. Off of the inventory widget, we want to say add viewport. So if we come in here and play, we should see our widget when we press I, and we do. One of the issues now is we can still move around. It could be what you want for your game, but for ours, we're going to stop the movement. And another issue is if I continue to press I, it continues to populate widgets in the same spot. So let's work on the first issue. For the first one, we want to get player controller to get access to the inputs. We want to say set input mode, and we're going to say UI only. Make sure you check the flush input so your character will stop moving, and then drag off of your inventory widget into the widget in focus. And the next thing we want to do is off this same player controller, do show mouse cursor. Sorry, do set show. And then we're going to set this to true. Then let's go look at that. Now, if I press it, I get this, and I can move my mouse, and I can no longer move my player. We still have the issue of, well, we don't have the issue of multiple populating because I can no longer press I, so that temporarily takes care of it. We're going to actually handle that in another way. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and create us a item that we can set as the parent. It'll be our test item for now. We'll just call it pickup item. And let's set this up. I'm just going to add a static mesh in here. Maybe just a sphere. And on the sphere, I'm also going to add a sphere collision. Make sure your sphere, let's rename this so it's not just sphere. Make sure your actual sphere is bigger than the item so you can interact with it. Next, go to your event graph. We can get rid of these for now and click on your collision sphere and come into your graph and right click and say on overlap and do an add on component begin overlap. The next thing that we want to do is make sure that our actor implements a certain interface so that only our actor will trigger this. So let's make the interface real quick. Let's go to blueprints, blueprint interface, and let's just name this pickup or inventory interface. And let's open that up. Inside here, the first one we want to do is called exchange information. We're going to use this to get and send information from our item to our player and the other way around. For now, we're just going to set this to have an output, and we're going to call this character and set this to a reference to your third person character or whichever character you're going to use this on. We're going to need one more function by the end of this, I'm going to go ahead and make it now. Just calling this update UI. And then for now, we can save and close this down. Back in your item, go to your third person character first, go to class settings, and under implemented interfaces, we need to add this inventory interface. So now this character implements this interface. And now in your pickup item, off of other actor, the actor that's colliding with our item, we're going to say does implement interface, set this to the inventory interface. And if this is true, so do a branch. If this is true, we're going to exchange information. And to do that, we need a reference to our player character. And as this player character, we're going to say exchange information. This will go to our third person character and it's going to get this character information. To do that, first we need to go back to our third person character, go to your interfaces and double click on exchange information. And in here, we just need to come off of this character node and say reference to self. So this will set that character variable to a reference of this instance of a character. That's all we need right here for now. And as this character, we're going to then set up our inventory system and we're going to add an item to that inventory system. The item we're going to add, and we can go back to our content browser for now, and we're going to add an item that has a name, an image, and some attributes such as health, strength, and magic. To set this structure up, we're going to create a blueprint structure, and I'm going to call this S item. Go ahead and open that up. And in here, we're going to do a name, which will be a text. Add one for image. This will be a textured 2D. Let's do one for HP. You can make this a float or integer or whatever you're using for your stat system. I'm just going to do integers to keep it simple. And then do one strength. This is all we need to do here, so we can save that and actually close this one down. The next thing we need to do back in our pickup item is we want to create a variable to use that item structure. So let's go variable, add a variable and call this item data. And we're going to use that S item structure. Just keep this as a single for now. We'll expose it in case we want to alter it in the editor. And now that we've added this item here, we can see the default values for this item. I'm just going to call it item parent since we're going to make children of this. You can set any image you want for now. In this episode, we're not going to use any of this information. We're just going to populate our list using just a name. So these defaults don't really matter. And then the next thing we need to do is have an actual inventory system that we can add this to. We can handle this a couple ways, quite a few ways actually. Some people handle it with an inventory component, a separate actor that monitors the whole thing. I'm just going to create a variable here to handle it on our third person character. So I'm going to go to variables and I'm going to call this inventory. I'm going to set this to that S item structure. And then this needs to be promoted to an array. So now back over in our pickup item, we now have a reference to the player character, which is calling and getting the reference to that specific third person character. So now we can actually get into his inventory. So say get inventory. And from here, once we pick up an item, we want to add that item. So grab your item data and put that in the input. And we're going to add, once we collide with an object, we're going to add that object into our player's inventory. And then we want to destroy the actor so it disappears. Let's go make sure that this is going to disappear. We won't see if it adds it to the inventory just quite yet. And there we saw it disappear. Next, let's work on populating our inventory widget, the list of items that we currently have. First, let's go over to our inventory item. There's a couple things that we need to do here. First, let's give this a different name, and we might call this item, or maybe item text would be more intuitive. And on item text, we want to come over to the details panel at the very top, check the is variable to expose it so we can use this. And the other thing we need to do is under content, we're going to say text, and we're going to bind this to an event. So say create binding. In this binding, we need a variable, and we're going to just call this name. And this is a text, and then drag that out here. And this name will actually set in our main widget as we populate these. So for now, that's all we need to do in inventory item. Let's jump back over to our inventory widget, which is the menu. A few things that we need to do in here. I want to give this a name as well. Might call this list item box, even though it's not a list, it's a scroll. But it's going to look like a list, just a scrollable list, so that's fine. And then same thing at the top of the details, mark is variable. And then from here, we can jump over to the graph. We're going to only use for now the event construct. And to start with, we need to get the reference to our player so that we can see his inventory to see if there's anything needs to be populated. So from here, we're going to say get player character, and we're going to call that exchange information. From exchange information, again, we can grab that inventory, and then we're going to do a for each loop. So for each item in this inventory, we're going to do something. Off the loop body, the thing that we're going to do on each item is create widget, set this widget to our inventory item. So we're going to create a new inventory item for each item that's in the inventory. Makes sense. And from here, we can now access the inventory item, that variable that we created, and this little function. So we want to say set name. We actually uh, don't need this yet. This will be something that we're going to use later on. Right now, we're just setting this name, and this is going to be used later. So for now, we'll ignore that, but we're going to set the name. And the thing we're going to set this to, if we go to our for each loop on this array element, each of these that we're going through is that item, which has that same item structure. So if we split this, we can see all the attributes that we created. And we're simply going to grab name and set it over here. Kind of arrange this to make it look a little better. So once we set the name of each item, the next thing we need to do is grab our list item box, say get, and we're going to add child. We're going to add a child to this scroll view. And that is going to be this inventory item is going to be the child. So we'll plug that in. Next, let's go test this and see what it looks like. If I press I, there's nothing in there. Rerun it. And then if I grab my item and I press I, now you see that there's an item in here. So if we put a few more of these out here and grab them first and press I, we now see that we have 4 of these items in our list, in our inventory. So that's working. Need to do a couple other things to kind of clean this up. First, let's go back to our third person character. We want to be able to close down our menu rather than leaving it up, which is kind of how we're handling it now. To do that, I think we're actually going to handle this kind of different than I had planned on. And the reason is I kind of want to be able to run around still and pick up items so that we can watch this update. So let's remove this for now. And let's do set input mode and do game and UI. Go ahead and plug that back in. Still going to show the mouse for now. So now when I press I should still be able to run around. But whenever I collect these, I no longer see them update. But if I press I again, it updates. The issue is if I keep pressing I, it's actually just repopulating that list over it. So at the very bottom of this, there's an empty list, which we do not want. So to handle this, we're going to go back to our third person character. Let's highlight this, right click on it and say collapse to function. And I'm going to call this open inventory. If we go now to our item, let's compile and save that. Actually, we still have our update UI, which is what we want, how we want to solve this. So if we double click our update UI, it'll give us our event here. And I want to, let's see, I need to, you're right, update this. I want to remove that inventory widget, and then I want to create a new one every time we update. And this update UI is going to be called in our item after we pick this up. So after the item disappears after we picked it up, let's get a reference to our get player character. And so we can run that update UI, still using that interface. So now once we pick this up, it'll run this update UI. And when we update UI, I want to say we need to get a reference to our widget. I had a variable here that was kind of left over from before I removed it so that we can see me actually do this. If we come off of this, once we get this widget here, we actually want to promote this to a variable. Connect that up. And let's name this variable inventory widget. This gives us a reference back to this widget so that we can create or edit or remove it, which is what we're going to go do. Once we run the update UI, it's going to come down here and we want to pull this inventory widget out. And we want to say remove from parent. This will remove it. So if we run this and we pull our menu up and go, it removes it. Now what we want to do is put that back. So now we can call open inventory. And if we pull our menu up and run around, now it populates. So we can dynamically see it fill that list as we grab items. The next thing that we want to do is give ourselves a way to close the inventory item. So let's go back into this, give us some space here. For this, we can actually use another function and maybe even just use that same button. So let's come off this and do a flip-flop. So if this is pressed once, it goes to A. If it's pressed again, it goes B. So if we press this once, it opens it. And if we press it again, we want it to close it. And to close this, we're going to do the same thing we do right here. Go ahead and get a reference to our inventory. Say remove from parent. And now if I pull my menu up, I can populate it. And if I press it again, it goes away. And now we can interact with it. The next thing we can do to test this real quick, just in closing, is we can right click on your parent item and say create child blueprint class. And let's name this cube item and open that up. And inside of here, we can give this different data. So let's call this cube. Let's change this from a sphere to a cube. Just going to do this kind of real quick to show. Give it that blue color. And drag a few of these out into the world. And we'll pull our menu up. And as we run into these, we now see our other item. So you can create children for as many items as you want. Another thing that we'll do in the future is create a item data table so we can spawn these items without having to come and actually duplicate it that way. But that'll be a future episode. For now, that's going to do it for this episode in the inventory system tutorial series. Today, we successfully set up a basic UI. We created a basic item pickup and added those items to our UI. In upcoming episodes, we're going to dive even deeper into using and interacting with those items, as well as enhancing our UI to keep track of the number of items rather than displaying multiple instances of that item in our menu. We're going to do that and a lot more. So if you enjoyed this episode and learned something new, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more awesome tutorials, especially the ones later in this series. As always, happy developing, and I'll see you in the next one.